friends. So you want to control your tricks and not make them more complicated than they need to be. And if they're feeling very forced, very complicated, you might want to take a step back before you're forced to when you're having a hard time or when you're running into issues with a certain trick. A lot of times we want to progress, and the easiest way to see progression is by getting a bit more technical with our tricks. So we go from kickflip to tray flip or kickflip to double flip, instead of going from landing a kickflip to really, feeling in control of that kickflip, or even doing that kickflip with more speed, or trying to really figure out the pop. So I'm going to do the infamous straight 8 that I always do, but with the intention to place a bit more priority on controlling it as opposed to just executing the tricks themselves, right? So kickflip is a trick where I feel I have a lot of control with that trick, where I can, do it into obstacles, do it on flat in different ranges of speed. Heel flips, if we're setting a kickflip at a 10, from 1 to 10 as far as control, then heel flips have to go down to a 7. Nollie flips, I would say that one is from a 7 to an 8. And then once we go into like switch flips, switch heels, nollie heels, and fakie flips, they're above a 5, but they're not all where a kickflip is. And so when I'm doing the straight 8, I'm keeping that in mind and I'm looking for ways that I can improve my control throughout all these tricks. These are tricks I have consistently, but I can always improve in the control aspect. So we're gonna start with a kickflip. Just do it right here in front of you. I'll do it over that line. Right here, kickflip. Okay, so that one, warming up, wasn't too much that I expected. The intention with the kickflip is to make sure I hear the snap, because with this one, it's not okay to just get away with the flick and landing it. I really want to feel the board spring up after the pop. Okay, that one actually felt super solid. I can always iterate on that and just improving that consistency. Once I feel like it's solid, I just go on to the next trick. So I'm gonna do heel flip. And heel flip, I can get a very similar result where it feels very controlled, but it's not at the level at the kickflip. And so here, what I want to really keep in mind is shake off the tension. If I feel tense in the approach, which is very common for me, I kind of have to shake it off, make sure I'm not tensing up so much more before I'm going to pop, and just allow myself to flow into the trick and execute it in a bit more of a fluid manner. That way I'm prioritizing controlling the trick instead of just landing it or complicating it by doing it into, let's say, a mani or a grind or off of some stairs. Because that was the biggest mistake in the past, where I had a heel flip on flat ground, so I would try to take it down some stairs or into a trick where there was still a lot more gains to be made on flat ground. Oh, okay. So that one was like 7.5. Let's see if we can get it to an 8.5. Okay. I feel kind of rushed because I kind of went around, but it did feel good in the execution. I'm also skating a smaller board, so I don't think it takes so much, as much effort to do the flicks. So by default, it feels so much more fluid. But that was an 8.3, I would say. So we're gonna try one more and see how I can improve that snap. It flowed very well, but I didn't really control it in the way I wanted to with the snap. So we're gonna place more intention on getting a good snap. Oh, yeah, I'm definitely rushing myself. Oh my god, almost. Okay, so that one, I felt tension. I didn't have time to shake it off. Part of that is the roll up. This brings up a good point. You want to make sure you're taking into consideration limiting factors that can not give you the space or the environment needed to build control with these tricks. So I'm gonna have to go further back so I have that space. Okay, I really felt like I gave myself breath, time, and I wasn't holding on to so much tension that I guess I built as I was pushing. So we got kickflip, a good heel flip. Now, nollie flips are ones that feel very comfortable, and I always do my best to improve them with a straight line, right? That's how I kind of try to focus on the control. So we're going to do the nollie flip here, and we're gonna intend to make sure we get a good nollie flip in the straight line, right? Okay. So again, with the whole space thing, you want to give yourself space so it's not a limiting factor. Oh, so I didn't start on the line, but I did end in the imaginary line that was there. So we're gonna do one more. Even though I went, vertical, I didn't really get that feeling of control. So you want to feel that instead of looking back at the video and relying on that for an affirmation. We want to be able to affirm the control from the feeling itself. If it doesn't feel right, then you always can use work, right? Let that intuition help you in building your control. Okay, so I'm not sure if it's because it's a smaller board, but it does feel so much easier to flick, and I'm forgetting a pop, or I'm not, maybe the dimensions aren't letting me pop a bit more, so I need to be a bit more intentional about where my foot is to get that good snap. And the reason I'm bringing that up is not to give an excuse, but more to understand your setup is going to really influence how much control you have on your board, because being able to control your board also means being able to apply power necessary to get a good snap. So if you're not, if you're having trouble getting a good snap, it means you're lacking power. And so you can ask yourself, if you're lacking power because of strength you're lacking, or because of a stability issue, right? And it can go hand in hand as well. So just keep that in mind. And it's not to look for an excuse, it's just to understand the factors you're dealing with, and understanding if they're playing into the limiting factors or the factors that are going to give you that ability to gain control, like space, breathing, staying over the lead foot, so on and so forth. So here we go again, nollie flip.
10 minutes.
Okay, so that one felt actually solid. The pop at least. So I landed on my back foot. I lost that engagement. So something that can help you build control is making sure you're engaging. You stay engaged throughout the roll in to the roll away. On the last one, I had that engagement in the roll in, and then I lost it as soon as I popped. So with that nollie flip, I really felt like I had control of the pop flick. I just got a bit lazy with the end. In order to really dial in this trick and make sure it's ready for more technical versions where I do this into, you know, any other variation, whether it's a manual grind off some stairs. I want to be able to set myself up for that in a way where I'll be effective whether or not I stay on flat or I go onto a different obstacle or do it into a different variation or in a different variation. Okay, toes hanging off. Definitely need to clean that up. Oh, that was good. I mentioned this a lot. You might want to check out other videos where I talk about this, but you want to stabilize through the forefoot. And a cue that helps, or something to keep in mind that helps you do that, is keep your toes on the board. Okay, so now we got fakie flip, we got nollie heel, switch heel, and fakie heel left. For fakie flips, where I'm lacking control is opening up so that I can stabilize myself effectively over this lead foot, which is the right one. And so that's something that that's somewhere where I place intention to improve when I'm working on fakie flips. So I'm gonna do one more with the intention to open up. On that one, I really placed that intention. I felt like I engaged. I was able to start low to end low, and it really felt like I was in control of that trick. So now I'm gonna go into the next one, which is a fakie heel. So with this fakie heel, it's very similar where the intention is to open up so I can stabilize comfortably over that lead foot, which is my right one. But because I understand it's not one that comes as naturally, I really need to be, I've learned that I really need to place intention in engaging, right? So staying low. I already mentioned it with the fakie flip, but I need to make sure I feel this engagement so that when I snap, it's with control instead of with force. Okay, it's easy to just kind of flick with all your might, but you really have to make sure you're feeling it as one motion instead of, you know, pop, flick, where you lose control, and instead of feeling how to do the fakie heel, you do more of you approach it with more force than feel. More force than fluidity is what I've always thought about when I approach these tricks, or when I practice, when I go about improving the control with this fakie heel flip. Okay. That one hurt. So something I think in mind when I'm doing fakie heels is, and I literally was like, damn, I didn't give myself enough time as soon as I sat down, was I need to give myself breath. So with this one, I can't accomplish it as fluid as I would like if I start from a short distance. So on this one, so on this attempt, I am going a bit further so that I have that time to breathe in between when I'm rolling up and I actually pop. I'm gonna get a little more breath here. Okay. If you guys noticed, it pretty much shifted, and that was not intentional, so there's a lot of work to be done. So we're gonna keep the same thing in mind, but in order for it not to shift, I need to make sure that I feel stable when I go down, so that when I go up, I'm not jumping out of that center line where it's gonna cause me my board to shift, or even force me to jump outside of where I need to be, which is centered over this lead foot. Okay, so you guys can see toes outside the board. So I'm going to place the intention to improve that, to bring them in. Oh, toes inside. Big win right there. I noticed I started from a shorter distance, and so that tells me I'm a little more warmed up. I built a little bit of confidence by getting closer the last time, and that comes from feeling your improvements, not, you know, analyzing them afterwards through video. Shorten that learning process and pay attention to how the trick feels and where you can improve, and how you can feel a bit more fluid as you progress through control. So we did fakie heel, fakie flip, nollie flip, kick flip, heel flip. That's 5. Now we need nollie heel, switch heel. I think that's it, right? Nollie heel and switch heel? Yeah. Switch flip. Oh my God, I'm forgetting switch flip. Switch flip is one of those where, you know, I have very consistently, but sometimes they're not as controlled as possible. And I find when that happens is because I kind of get lazy about opening up. And so here, on top of placing the intention to open up, I'm gonna really feel that pressure on my right forefoot, which is the lead foot, so that I make sure I'm stable and I get a good snap. Right? That was a good snap actually. I felt like I went high, but good snap. Oh! Open up, pressure on that right foot. Oh, okay, nice. So that's a trick I have very comfortably. That one, that's a trick I have very comfortably. That one wasn't the best, but we're gonna move on for the sake of the video. But what I will say, on top of what I've already mentioned about feeling more fluid instead of feeling like we're forcing the progress, and you know, doing reps with so much tension, I really want you to think about how you can make sure to look for the little adjustments that are gonna help you feel that much more comfortable. So we're not looking for a aha moment. We're just looking for progress in a slow manner. So we're gonna move on to switch heels and nollie heels. That one's very difficult. It's harder to place that tension on that right forefoot. But what I have noticed that has helped me, which I'm gonna place a little more intention here, and I guess it's super easy to get lazy with it, is making sure I have this pointing a bit more out, so that when I go down, I don't gravitate to falling back, but instead I hold myself and I can get low and spring back up, instead of going low and kind of having gravity drop me back, right? Like you saw there. So I'm gonna externally rotate my foot. Little wins, like I said, small adjustments. Look for those small adjustments. Feel those small adjustments. The biggest win with nollie heels for myself, when I transitioned more to fluidity from forcefulness, was when I got really comfortable doing nollies, right? Where I was centered over the lead foot, which with a nollie heel is my left one, right? That much so that when I went for the nollie heel, I can keep that same center, that same stability, and really feel confident when I snap, right? If any of this makes sense to you, where we want to prioritize control instead of getting complex, instead of getting more technical with tricks, then you might want to consider coaching or lessons, so we can figure out a way where control can meet you at your progression. Let me do the nollie heel. Oh, okay, went too slow. Oh, lean back on that one. So, as I said, we're not looking for well, I didn't say this, but we're not looking for perfection. We're looking for the small adjustments that give us little pieces of comfort as we grow in this form of progress. Of course, there's nothing wrong with getting more technical and challenging yourself, where you take a kickflip and then you add another one. Let's do that again. There's nothing wrong with going from a kickflip to, let's say, a double kickflip. But just know there's a lot of room for progression with the kickflip, where you can improve your control as you iterate upon those tricks. So this was an example of how I, you know, apply myself to improve in that control instead of getting more complex with the choice of tricks I practice. Sometimes we bite off more than we can chew. And the way that looks like in skateboarding is straight away going for a double kickflip when we just learned a kickflip. And many times we rush through that process, so we find ourselves 10 years later not being able to have full control of a kickflip that we've known how to land for many years. But again, it's not about just landing tricks, it's about actually learning them, how to control them and apply them on different obstacles, into different variations. So if you're someone who finds yourself leaning into making your tricks more complex by, you know, adding another flip or doing that flip down a set of stairs or onto an obstacle, but never really feel that fluidity I mentioned in this video, you might want to consider coaching or lessons where I can guide you through that process. So you got to make sure you place more intention in the small wins where you can build that control, that fluidity, instead of the force, that tension and the complexity that comes very naturally as we progress with skating, because sometimes it comes from peer pressure or, you know, looking at the outside instead of looking within and really feeling what it means to progress through that control. I hope to see you in the next videos. We have lives, we have memberships, coaching and lessons are available. If you're interested in that, profe.carlos on Instagram is where you want to find me. Until then, I'll see you in the next video.